we need to require mastery of our students. We need to quiz our students for self-tests because that will reveal weak areas and provide opportunities to review again and reinforce the material. Don't be too quick to sign off on a self-test because that truly is the test as to whether they are ready to take the PACE test. And if you sign off and they're not ready, they're probably not going to do very well on the self-test or on the PACE test. And please require a legitimate 80% on all tests. I can't tell you how many times when I've been teaching about this subject and sharing that people come up afterwards and say, well, what if they get a 79? And I look at them and I say, is a 79 an 80 or above? They say, well, no, but it's close. I said, no. Is it an 80% or above? If it's not an 80% or above, that means there's at least 20% of the information in this PACE that they haven't retained. And so they need to go back and do it again. You're not penalizing them. You're helping them because they'll need that information later on. And that makes sure that if they do fail a PACE, that they repeat the entire PACE, not just the checkups, not just the self-test, not just the test. They need to go back and repeat all of the material so that they learn it properly. And then it's very important that we train them to think for themselves. They would much rather let you do the thinking for them because it's a whole lot easier, but don't you do it. You're cheating them if you do that. Instead, ask leading questions that are going to point them toward the answer. Don't tell them the answer. Show them places on the page and say, well, read this section again. Look at this paragraph. Read that out loud to me. And many times they'll read it and they say, oh, there it is right there. And you say, that's right, great. Go ahead and write that down and keep going. They must learn to process that information and think critically for themselves. Require memorization as foundational to critical thinking. The basis for all thinking skills is knowledge, the ability to remember facts and details, and you need to not cut them short on that. Once the child has learned the information, then they can develop the ability to understand what is being presented because they understand the parts. They understand all the pieces and they can put it together for themselves. They can use what they have learned to think creatively and independently without having you answer all their questions. And then they find meaningful ways to use that information in the next situation that they come to. So again, they are thinking for themselves. 1 Thessalonians 5:21 says, prove all things, hold fast that which is good. They learn to prove things for themselves. And then help them discover their abilities. Many times, children don't know what they're good at because they've never tried it. Or sometimes, talents can hide under a lack of confidence. Maybe this child has that perfect older brother. How many of you had a perfect older brother? I had one. A perfect older brother who always did the right thing. At least I thought he did. He always did the right thing, and he was always good at things. And in that shadow of that perfect older brother or that friend that you have that everybody likes and they're just very, very popular, sometimes your confidence begins to lag because you feel like you don't measure up. Or maybe you just those gifts remain hidden because you've never had the guidance to find them or the training or even the opportunity. Students can grow in ways other than academically to find their skills, and once they build confidence in one area, it's going to roll over into their academics and to all other areas of their life. When we were in Maryland, I can remember the first year that we were going to take our children to student convention. And so I was encouraging them to try new things. And I was sitting with one of our older boys, and John said, well, I'm good in sports, so I guess I'll do a few sporting things. And he was a really good writer, so I said, well, you need to write something. But I challenged him, and I said, John, try something that you have never done before in your life. And he said, okay, I'll think about it. And he came back a few days later, and he said, I've decided I'm going to do a metalworking project. I was absolutely shocked. And I said, have you ever done anything with metalworking? He said, no, I haven't. But that's what I decided I'm going to do. I said, well, good for you. Let's sign you up for it. Well, he went home and he worked and he worked. And of course, John was a studious boy. So he got books and he looked to see what he could do. And he kept telling me he was working on this project. And I was getting really excited about it because he was excited. And when he brought it in before we went to convention, I couldn't believe my eyes. That young man had taken wire thread and he had taken small pieces of metal and he had built a praying mantis. It was beautiful. It was about 6 inches long. When I set it down on the desk, it looked like it could just jump off the desk at any time. I couldn't believe that was the first time that boy had ever tried to do anything in that genre. Well, we were real excited. We went to our regional convention and John took the first place ribbon with his metalwork. We went crazy. Everybody screamed and yelled and cheered. But we didn't know what to expect when we got to International Student Convention because we had never been there. And we knew it was going to be really big and there were going to be students from all over the world. And John entered his little praying mantis. And when they called the winners, he took the 6th place ribbon. You would have thought we had taken first place in everything. That's the only ribbon we took home from internationals that year, but we went wild. The whole group went wild. It was as if we had all won, and it really meant a lot to all of us, but especially to John because he had overcome and learned something new. By the way, he's a chiropractic doctor right now. He's very, very accomplished. But I believe that because he was willing to try new things, it really helped him with his confidence. We can help them realize that mistakes are part of a learning process. When we acknowledge our mistakes, we actually figure out what doesn't work. And that there are a lot more things that don't work than do work. And so that helps them narrow the field and move on and find another approach to figure out how things really work. Because problem solving is a process. It's not something that just happens. It's trial and error, especially when they begin something new. It's not uncommon for them to have things wrong and have to start over again. Of course, that doesn't mean it's easy or that it's comfortable for any of us. We don't like to fail. We don't like to be wrong, but we need to look at it from a positive angle and see that it can be a very positive thing. Some of the best learning can come from a mistake or a failure because when they have a wrong answer, encourage them not to quit, but to say, why didn't that work? And then try something else. This is why it's so important when they're working in their math paces that they show all their work. How many times do you have a student say to you, why do I have to write it all down? All I need is the answer. Well, no, that's not all you need because the answer is just part of the process. And if they, especially those long multiplication problems and those long division problems, if they write down all their work and they go to the score key and all they look at is the answer and their answer is wrong, and then they go back to their office and they're just disgusted with themselves and they erase the whole thing, they've missed the process. Encourage them to make sure that they score everything. Because it might be one digit that's wrong, not the whole thing. And so they can go back and just rework that one line and see what they did wrong, add it up, and they'll have the right answer. The process is the important thing to learn. So help them to see that it's more important to look at the details and follow the process. Because success breeds success. Once you figure something out, you are encouraged to keep going on to the next challenge because you worked your way through it and you've proven to yourself that you can work through those challenges and work past those mistakes. I would encourage you to have all of your students keep a notebook for every subject that they have. What are they going to put in the notebook? Well, they're going to write down all the rules, all the vocabulary from each pace. They're going to copy anything in the learning strips, those boxes that tell them how to do something. They need to copy those into their notebooks so they have that foundational information of how to do what they're being taught. And then if they got anything wrong on the checkups or the self-test, you want them to write the activity with the correct answer. So when they're studying, they're not remembering the wrong answer. They're studying the correct answer. The tactile and visual reinforcement from writing and looking at that information again to put it in the notebook will again push that information down into the long-term memory. We don't want them to just learn it and remember it long enough to take the test and then forget it all. We want it to go down into that long-term memory. And this notebook becomes a personal resource as they move on in that subject. Train them to use their notebooks for information before they raise their Christian flag to ask you for academic help. Then, if you answer a Christian flag and they ask you a content question, ask if they have reviewed the section in their notebook. It helps them become more academically independent. We want them to be able to learn by themselves. And so keep encouraging them. By the way, if you continue to say that to them, they're going to figure out that they might as well get their notebook out and look and see if they can figure it out first, because they know you're going to ask them that, and they'll save themselves a lot of time. Encourage them to keep their notebook for the entire course. For example, if they're doing Algebra 1, you want all 12 paces in that one notebook so that they can look back at the previous paces when they forget what they're supposed to do in a particular kind of problem, and to keep that in their office as a reference tool. Now, it's not ideal for them to stop in the middle of a subject at the end of the school year, but sometimes that happens. And if that does happen, you just might want to offer to keep their notebook in the file with their paces for the next year so that they don't lose it over the summer, because they're going to need that resource at the beginning of the year next year.